Hello, it is me, Marie Blue Angel, and I am back yet again with Under the Thorns. And I'm just excited to see what's going to happen, just because I feel like we're towards the end of the story, I'm assuming, but that's just my intuition. But I feel like chapter 9 is going to hold a lot of good stuff for us, so let's just get into it. As a storm of emotions receded, a tide of unexpected shame washed over me. I found myself fidgeting, brushing at my flushed cheeks as I stole a glance at Edward. He stood shrouded in silence, his expression unreadable, yet a curious tinge of crimson adorned the tip of his nose. The sight so incongruous with his stoicism threatened to crack open the dam of my composure. I squeezed my eyes shut, silently commanding myself to maintain decorum. "Not now, Clara," I muttered, a stern reprimand to the burgeoning giggle threatening to erupt. "So let's shift our focus." This man is hella blushing. Look at him. "It would be wise for us to explore potential ways to break the curse, or find a solution." He nodded.
だから言いたいことがあるんだ。
Ah, yes, we were trying to break the curse now. What is it?
やっぱりお母さんが残したネックレスが僕を守ってくれているでしょう。
Right. It's for your protection. So can we do anything with it, or do we risk you dying if we do something, like tamper it? Based on what you've shared, yes. Skepticism gnawed at the edges of my resolve. Olivia handing over the pendant, Edward wearing it for years. It all felt too convenient. Yet the desperate hope in his eyes, the raw reverence with which he clutched to it like a talisman, could doubt coexist with genuine need? I mean, if Olivia gave him that necklace, and supposedly it's from his mother, I would not trust Olivia. But also, it's very risky to like try an experiment to see what would happen if he didn't have the necklace. But maybe the necklace is preventing him from leaving, or it feeds, like maybe that's a source in a way in which the curse feeds on Edward's energy. At least long enough, and unsuspectingly, that he would think he's fine compared to other people in the house. So, who knows? The heavy silence pressed down, and I leaned in, a silent query in my gaze. As if startled by my unspoken question, he retreated before resuming his explanation.
お母さんが呪いに備えてネックレスを残していたとしたら何か知っていたのではないか。
Okay, so we need to find out what your mother knew. My eyes lit up. It was an intriguing angle I hadn't explored. That does seem plausible.
だから先代から受け継がれた呪いかもしれないと思ったよ。
Okay, an ancestral inheritance? I mean, it's not impossible.
今までは父が怖くて考えていなかったが。
I mean, that's fair. Clearly, Robert's will was a chilling testament to his loathing, made blatantly clear in the face that he had left Edward's name out completely. Under that cold gaze, Edward never dared to breathe a word of the curse, let alone challenge it. Only once Robert lay silent did he cautiously share his forbidden theory with me. My support fanned the flames of his conviction.
だから今日父の書斎に寄ってみようかと思う。
Have we not visited your father's study before, or you mean with a particular purpose to look for more clues? I would assume you already done that before, but okay. Would you prefer some company?
でも難しいんじゃないかな。
Okay, that's fine. You're correct. Edward's welcoming facade occasionally lulled me into a dangerous oblivion. The whispers, the disapproving glances, they were a constant reminder. A servant in the Lord's domain was a scandal waiting to brew. I'll instead explore alternative methods to gather pertinent information. Seasoned servants like Alice or Bruce, who spent years polishing every nook and cranny under Robert, wouldn't miss a misplaced book or a scuffed portrait. They might have stumbled upon something odd, and the thought filled me with a surge of confidence that didn't escape Edward's notice. He met my gaze with a knowing smile.
ありがとう。おね。
Oh, sorry. He was going to say, if you please, or... "Onegaishimasu." Rest assured, I shall do my best. The thought of offering comfort to the man whose eyes mirrored the shadows of this imposing house was a flicker of light in the oppressive darkness. It emboldened me, filling my veins with the current of courage that crackled like a forbidden spark. Okay, so on our way with investigations. Ooh, Edward POV. As he goes to his father's study. Father's study, that austere chamber of my childhood, remained perpetually sealed like a Pandora's box. I see, so it was sealed off. It exuded an air of foreboding, as if breathing within its musty confines invited unspeakable calamity.
結局はこんなものか。
A resolute inhalation filled my lungs, casting the study door in a new light. Why had I danced around this threshold for so long? Marionette to a fear that no longer held its strings. I mean, psychological things, they're strong effects. At least you're confronting this space now. To move on, to breathe freely, I had to crack this shell.
一生を逃げて生きるわけにはいかない。
It wasn't just for Clara, not just for anyone else. This was for me. A chance to untangle the mysteries that choked my own breath. With a murmured echo of my resolve, I creaked the door open, stepping into the unknown. Crossing the threshold, I found myself in a study as insipid as its master. Leather-bound volumes lined the walls, their titles whispering of stoicism and propriety, a fitting epitaph for a man of such unyielding nature. Pulling the door shut with a soft click, I stepped forward, only to flinch at the grimy floorboards beneath my boots. This sanctum, once a testament to my father's meticulous habits, now wore the disheveled countenance of unkempt mourning. I confess, while my expectations weren't lofty, it pained me to see such neglect from those once so devoted to him. A wistful smile played on my lips as I wandered through the familiar contours of the study. My steps led to a heavy mahogany desk, its surface marred by light dusting of neglect. As I brushed the film away with a gentle swipe, my gaze caught upon a portrait of my mother, her youthful visage framed in dark wood. A telltale smudge, faint as a whispered memory, traced her cheek, a silent testament to his enduring love, even in the face of separation.
もしかしたら僕たちは似ていたのかもしれません。
Wow, what about Edward? Just kidding, we know what he's talking about. With a sigh, I turned my attention to the bookshelves, their shelves burdened by Father's relentless pursuit of intellectual mastery. Yet nestled in the shadowed corner, a discordant note emerged, an unsettling collection of volumes devoted to the arcane arts of curses and witchcraft. A curious wrinkle formed on my brow. It was an incongruity that wouldn't sit easy with my knowledge of my father's resolutely pragmatic nature.
お父さんならお母さんのためだろう。
If not to exercise my curse, then. My hand, drawn by premonition, hovered over the glass of the bookshelf. Okay, so we're looking at stuff, and now we're back to Clara. I'm going nowhere with them. Or getting nowhere. My inquiries regarding the curse proved fruitless. This was particularly troubling since Edward's induction heralded a significant turnover amongst the servants. No matter how delicately I broached the subject, I encountered only impenetrable silence, as if every tongue had been bound by an unseen oath. You better check with Olivia. For those reasons. Even those in the innermost circles of my acquaintance found cause to rebuke me. Your unending curiosity is causing issues. You could find yourself in trouble. What's your interest in the late lord and his wife? The relentless onslaught of admonitions and casting a dizzying spell upon me. Desperate, I clasped my ears, vigorously shaking my head in a fervent attempt to dispel the disorienting echoes. Hold on, I can only focus on one person at a time. Then, pay attention properly. Alice's eyes darted across the room. She leaned in close and whispered words etched with a shadow of concern on her face. There is no one here who can help. No one here who can help. So, why? If we could provide an answer, we would. Anyway, steer clear of your new lord for a while. Not for a while. Forever. Haven't you learned? Would she really listen to that? With a solemn shake of his head, Thomas halted Alice's kick aimed at Bruce's shin. She's just worried about you, like we all are, he muttered, bearing a troubled expression. I sensed an unseen event during my absence. My concern deepened. This presents a significant problem. I absently toyed with my lips, a nagging suspicion gnawing at me. Kept at it, I figured I might just as put the muzzle on everyone I was acquainted with. Whom should I confide in? I murmured, memories of countless faces fleeting through my mind. Of all the possible sources, this person seemed the most likely to hold the key to Robert's secrets. What? I have to choose, but I don't think Olivia... Would the head butler know? Okay, I'm gonna save. I'll come back. Okay. Because I definitely think Olivia would know. But I feel like maybe the head butler... I don't think Brandon would know. I'm gonna say the head butler. Indeed, Alan possessed considerable knowledge regarding Robert. I recalled the gentleman who had provided assistance to have visibly shaken Edward. Olivia usually dictated the rhythm of the manor, but Alan, the head butler, held sway over the lord's official domain. His impartial support of Edward, the manor's new lord, spoke volumes. A person of Olivia's caliber could surely unravel the mystery surrounding Robert without constraint. Crafting excuses, I meandered through the spaces he frequented. Encountering Bruce, he mentioned Alan was currently at a meal. He eyed me with suspicion regarding my search, but I had an alternative reason for seeking him, rendering me undeterred. John requested me to provide the progress report in his absence. The damaged tombstone you mentioned. Yes. Releasing a sigh heavy with implications, I gestured reluctance to accepting the task. Yes, she would maybe say. Bruce nodded, offering his encouragement without further questions. Well, I do really like this dining room. It's so pretty. Alan was amidst the chore of returning dishes as I entered the servants' hall. Determined not to miss him, I approached and extended a friendly greeting. Hello, Alan. Good morning. Yes, good afternoon. It's quite late for it to be morning. Unlike the others, his countenance remained stoic. The perpetual formal stance he assumed paradoxically offered a sense of reassurance. What an irony. With the restoration of a damaged tombstone as a secondary motive and excuse, I unraveled the information to him. He mentioned that the cracks are severe, and it might be better to replace it with a new one. That's not a decision he should be making independently. In that case, I can inform John. That wouldn't be necessary. I will correspond with him and convey that I intend to discuss this matter with him directly. His response was swift and dismissive, leaving me momentarily at a loss for words. My nod was a feeble acknowledgement of the abrupt conclusion. I remained fumbling for a new topic. A faint chuckle from above caught my attention. My apologies. I didn't mean to jest with you. I redirected my gaze to Alan, shedding his customary formality. He posed a question in hushed tones, as if foreseeing the unfolding events. Is there another motive prompting you to desire to meet with me? Truly, his intuition befitted the role of a head butler. Okay, Alan, you go. A subtle nod from my end, accompanied by lowered voices, indicated our shared understanding. I wish to unravel the mysteries of the curse. May I ask as to why you are bringing this matter to my attention? Given your direct association with the late Lord Robert, I believe you may possess insights that could illuminate the situation. Alan released a brief sigh, tracing his jawline with fingertips culminating in a tender smile. The expression mirrored his adeptness in navigating intricate situations. It is Mr. Brandon? Fuck. Well, this is still a good lead. I did not trust Olivia. But I don't know. I mean, I guess Brandon didn't really care about his brother, or maybe he knew enough, and that's why he despises his late brother. Who knows? If that is your inquiry, you might find Mr. Brandon more informative than me. Mr. Brandon? Indeed, he seems to possess a wealth of information. Evidently, Edward envisioned me as Brandon's ward. Brandon would want me to discuss about this matter. Alan, likely in possession of this knowledge, elucidated the rationale behind his prior kindness. As I consequented to the proposition, another sigh escaped Alan, accompanied by a disapproving shake of his head. He's expressed openness to discussions, even if you lack official business. I would advise caution in your interactions. His tone resonated with a subtle blend of concern and anxiety, prompting a reassessment of my initial evaluation of Brandon. I mean, I guess it's good we didn't go to Brandon right away. You're still here? My god, I thought you had left. Upon my unannounced arrival, Brandon extended a courteous greeting, presenting me with a cup of tea, seemingly anticipating my visit. Acknowledging my abrupt entrance, I settled into the chair opposite to him, expressing my regret for any perceived rudeness. My apologies for the unannounced visit. Well, a visit from a lovely young lady is always a pleasant surprise. He responded with a pleased wink, comfortably reclining into his sofa. So, have you heard about Edward's proposal? I declined it. Now that is interesting, or intriguing. It's absurd even to... This is the issue, Mr. Brandon. Why would you indulge his childish whims? Childish whims? The subtle twitch of Brandon's cheeks, coupled with a deliberate attempt to suppress laughter, hinted at an amusement derived from my transformation of Edward into a kid throwing a tantrum. My ability to navigate his mischievous tendencies have evidently improved. Maintaining an unwavering posture, I continued, undeterred. Anyway, I have something to discuss with you. Please, after all that amusement you provided, it's the least I can offer. I would like to inquire if you have any knowledge of Edward's parents' involvement in his curse. As I unraveled the narrative of Robert, his wife, and the entwining curse, Brandon's countenance underwent a perceptible shift. Sensing a potential deviation in the mood, I promptly tried to refocus his attention. I understand it's an uncomfortable topic, particularly regarding Mr. Robert, but this is for Edward's well-being. Engaging in a lock of gazes, I found myself clutching my clothes, sensing the onset of perspiration on my palms. Despite the discomfort, I pressed on, detailing the unfolding events. Brandon, exercising commendable restraint, absorbed the account without interjecting with comments. His reaction was palpable when I disclosed Edward's intent to break the curse. You've revived the spirit of my boy, after all. A spectrum of emotions, excitement, joy, pain, guilt, and regret enveloped the room. It became apparent that Brandon harbored a profound sense of indebtedness toward Edward. Edward is currently in the study to unravel the mysteries. Robert's study? Indeed. Releasing a succinct sigh, Brandon exhibited a resolute demeanor, signaling an imminent revelation. Clara, I believe a thorough and extended conversation may be necessary. His eyes momentarily fluttered with regret before closing. The open mouth seemed poised to articulate sentiments of sorrow. Yes, I have sinned. Like the rest of us. What? Wait. What the fuck? And then what are you talking about? When he said of my boy, or my boy, does that mean that's his kid, and Robert took him into his wing because Brandon wasn't in the spot to take care of a kid, or he just feels that affection towards his nephew. Who knows? Okay. Also Olivia. In a realm where walls possess auditory acuity and the doors are endowed with visual perception, I fortified my position. In a landscape bereft of trust, reliance on these sentient structures became imperative. A fallibility I cannot afford, given my unwavering commitment since the inception of my presence in this manner. Setting aside the papers, I observed the countenance of the individual who had sought entry. His visage, characterized by ingenuousness and desire-fueled eyes, bore a striking resemblance to the individual I harbored the utmost disdain for. A figure of avarice, complicit in the suffering of others, and yet exuded a sense of self-satisfaction. A subtle smile adorned my features. I anticipate the information. I shall augment your remuneration for the upcoming week. It is implausible for him to entertain the notion that his subsequent remuneration would be withheld. Observing his departure, I proceeded to the rear window. The tranquil panorama of the manor unfolded before me, signaling the imminent conclusion. You have astutely pieced it together, Clara. The virtuous, noble child at odds with my formal inclinations within such a brief temporal span. Perhaps it is this incongruity that prompts my inner demon to insidiously murmur. A curtain call for this mundane theatrical performance. Indeed, as it should be. Uttering under my breath, I drew the curtains across the window. Darkness surged within once more. Okay, that's ominous. I think that's just more confirmation that Olivia's not is like truly at the heart of all this. And also, who are you paying? Like, are you paying someone to spy across the manor for you? I don't know. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna keep going because this would be a very short video if I didn't keep going. So let's see. Chapter 10. Ascend. My breath hitched at the startling choice of words. The sip of tea seized in the recesses of my throat, compelling a series of spasmodic coughs. Brandon, with a sigh that resonated through the room, unfurled his eyes, emerging from the depths of contemplation. If I am to discuss my sins, I cannot omit the tale of Isabella. Lady Isabella was Mr. Robert's spouse, correct? And Edward's mother. The skilled painter, whose artistic prowess translated the enchanting landscapes of her coastal home onto grand canvases, also assumed the pivotal role of gifting Edward the protective pendant to counter the impending curse. Deliberately, I placed my teacup down, engrossed in Brandon's continuing tale. Hair as white as platinum, eyes as blue as the ocean, skin as white as mercury. She was beautiful, to say the least. A lady possessing immense elegance, encapsulating profound sophistication within her polished beauty. As her presence unfolded and took form, she evoked parallels with Edward. It crossed my mind that Edward likely inherited more from his mother, Isabella, than his father, Robert. I also called her Isabel earlier. I meant to say Isabella. Whoops. Brandon continued to weave the tale of the couple's initial encounter. Nestled in an affluent but academically deficit town, the brothers, Robert and Brandon, stood out as intellectual beacons. They bore the weight of lofty expectations. However, it was these very expectations that provided the impetus for the brothers to venture into the city, seeking quality education. The first person of our age we encountered there was Isabella. So you all attended the same academy. Alas, it only made Robert lovesick more and more. Lovesick? Isabella's family hailed from the maternal side of the royal family. Robert's affection for Isabella blossomed for their initial encounter, evolving into an enduring love. However, the sentiments of Brandon and those in his vicinity harbored a notable lack of optimism. Isabella's lineage boasted revered titles, while her siblings wielded potent influence in political and social spheres. Rumors alluded to an impending betrothal between Isabella and the prince, despite her marginal seniority. As one not of noble standing, the intricacies of these matters eluded my full comprehension. I promptly shrugged in response. Marrying her must have presented its challenges. I am certain whether I should credit it to his unyielding determination. As Brandon recounted, Robert spared no effort in orchestrating various events at the manor to capture her attention. These occasions ranged from the jubilant festivities of New Year's parties and elegant balls to the more solemn gatherings, like charity fundraisers and funerals for family graves within the estate. The young gentleman, assuming the role of host, not only curated lavish parties, but also tended to the gardens, expressing a consistent desire for Isabella's presence. TLDR, the man was doing the most. The young lady, despite the spatial separation, steadfastly accepted invitations to grace the manor with her presence. That's truly romantic. They indeed made for an exquisite couple. His gaze lingered in the vast expanse, obscured by contemplative mist, as though he traversed the realms of a past moment described. He's so sad. He looks sad. My God. The culmination arrived when the young lady, a figure universally upheld with reverence, gracefully intertwined her fingers with Robert's. This catalyzed a wave of revelry and joy throughout the manor, with wishes of eternal happiness echoing through its halls. Brandon, too, became a participant in this communal celebration. Enveloped in the unfolding narrative, I found myself in a state of quiet bewilderment, hand delicately veiling my mouth, before cautiously posing a question. So her late lady's death was attributed to a plague. In the midst of a widespread plague, death swept through communities, claiming numerous lives. However, the brunt of the fatalities fell upon the less privileged, lacking access to medical resources. Hence the assertion that Lady Isabella perished from the plague raised legitimate doubts. Sensing my contemplation, Brandon conveyed his insights in a subdued tone. She could have survived had she taken the prescribed medication, but Isabella refused to do so. Why? Because the fetus in her womb, Edward, was likely to die. But one would have prioritized their life above all else. I'd agree, but I can't fathom the thoughts of a deceased person. Brandon's assertion stands correct. The musings of Lady Isabella remain inscrutable, beyond our realm of understanding. We are only left with conjecture and speculation. I mean, not saying it was right or wrong, but some people would. I mean, people are known to also give up their lives for their child. And also, I know that people would also choose themselves over their child in their room. So, okay. But, like, was there anything else? Then why is there a curse? He sighed deeply and delicately massaged the corners of his eyes. Meanwhile, the disease had evolved to a stage where the symptoms were beyond control. Robert was willing to go to any lengths to save Isabella, who was carrying Edward. Brandon perceived an entire realm of curses, demonic summoning, and purported superstitions accumulating in Robert's study. Despite his earnest efforts to dissuade Robert, the latter persistently advanced, akin to a racehorse enduring relentless whipping. A mournful sob emanating as the tale reached its conclusion. So, Mr. Robert initiated the curse? Yes, eventually Robert made a pact with the devil, offering the purest soul. But Lady Isabella died nonetheless. In the moment, her eyes locked. Brandon's gaze tinged with red. An agonizing pulse reverberated through my head. The realization of Brandon's departure from the manor dawned upon me, stoking an undercurrent of fury. Lady Isabella's demise condemned Edward to perpetual confinement within these walls. The extent of sacrifice for Robert's avarice eluded comprehension, as did the duration squandered in Brandon's silence. A seismic surge of rage consumed my entire being, inducing an involuntary tremor. You are such a coward. I am. If this was the truth, you should have told Edward sooner. You're correct, Clara. Then we could have resolved this matter earlier. I simply lacked the courage. Veiling his face with both hands, a guttural groan escaped him, a futile lament against the inexorable forces at play. The looming specters of Robert's descent into madness and the burden of guilt stood as insurmountable foes. Would the abandonment of the manor have granted him respite? Alas, no. It would have amounted to a fleeting reprieve, a daily ordeal, an unrelenting torment. The curse of Robert's blind love wove a clandestine tapestry of discontent, ensnaring all within its web. My love for the manor, its people, and though humbly expressed, for Edward, precluded any desire for further anguish to emanate from the manor's affairs. Brandon, I want to break the curse of the manor. A stern countenance settled upon Brandon as my words permeated the air. In his eyes, a conviction resonated, a belief in the insurmountable nature of the impending task. You believe you're the sole individual who has attempted this. I've made numerous attempts and met with failure. But it's different now. Edward is showing progress. If you make a mistake, you could lose your life. If I dwelled on that, I wouldn't have initiated this in the first place. Consider Edward. The tenor of Brandon's voice, not like mine, ascended in response to my unequivocal declaration. The crimson hue engulfed his face, eliciting a modicum of trepidation within me. Yet succumbing to fear meant forfeiting any prospect of progress. The tale's closure lay in refusing to heed its narrative. I resolved to stand steadfast with Edward until its denouement. Denouement? I only know how to say that in French. Denouement? Denouement? Hoping for its lasting existence. A peculiar understanding of Lady Isabella's emotions stirred within me. Love, in its profound intricacies, sometimes steered one towards decisions steeped in self-interest. Reinforcing my determination, I redirected my attention to the intensely illuminated Brandon, restating my question. Help me, please. You are. I'm prepared to stake my life on this. It's not solely a matter of determination. Then what course of action do you suggest? What? Is there anyone else more deserving to break the curse? Brandon, waiting for the perfect moment might be too late. For an extended moment, Brandon's unwavering gaze remained fixed upon me, an unbreakable connection forged between our eyes. The imminent release of words from my lips was abruptly severed, my attention captivated by the intensity of his stare. His palpable flinch disrupted the equilibrium as our gazes collided. The moisture-laden eyes, once tinged with regret, underwent a transformative vanishing act, reverting him to the familiar persona of a mature gentleman. A feeble chuckle accompanied by a resigned shake of his head underscored an apparent surrender to circumstances beyond his control. Okay, but how do we break the curse then if it... Okay, at the end of the day, it was his dad's doing, and his mom still died because this supernatural force, like, kind of just took advantage of his dad, and Edward's now trapped. So how do we break that? Is Olivia upkeeping this? Is Olivia the supernatural force via like a physical vessel to oversee the curse? Maybe, who knows? But how? How are we going to break this? That is what I'm still curious about. Like father, like son, I suppose. They truly share a similar taste in their preferences. Excuse me? I meant, you were the type of girl he would fall for, like Isabella. My education and beauty fell short compared to Lady Isabella's. Girl, that's not the point. I brushed it off as another whimsical jest from a mischievous gentleman. Brandon clicked his tongue, filling his pipe with tobacco, all the while requesting my forbearance. I can endure it if I don't smoke. His hands trembling, he kindled his pipe and drawing in the smoke. An oddly unpleasant fragrance began to pervade the air. First, it would be best to investigate the location where the witchcraft was initially performed. The location? The cabin in the courtyard. Robert summoned a devil in the basement of that cabin. What? Wasn't that where Olivia's intrigue unfolded? So, Olivia. Springing to my feet in incredulity, I deduced the answer. The woman who bequeathed the pendant to Edward, the nocturnal dweller in the cursed cabin. Olivia was the one casting spells from that enigmatic basement. I believe I've figured out how to break the curse. Positive? Yes. In fact, I saw Olivia there. I disclosed to Brandon what had remained unspoken. After my exposition on why Olivia was suspect, Brandon went pale and huffed. Is this a mere coincidence, or has she returned? What else happened? It would take too long to explain now. We need to get to the cabin. The motive behind the hurry remained unclear, same, whether it aimed to halt the unfolding ritual or forestall additional harm. Shouldn't we come up with a better plan? I mean, I guess we have a plan, Clara has a plan, but this is a little rushed. Are you sure you're not in it, Brandon? I kind of don't trust him. Nonetheless, I assented, surveying Brandon's already perspiring and decaying visage. All right, then. I will inform Edward. Clara. When I returned my gaze to Brandon, prompted by the urgent call, he shook his head. He indicated a reluctance to involve Edward. Our first priority is to halt the ritual. I think Brandon's in on it, and this is why, because Edward should at least know. If Olivia is indeed the true culprit, she may have already anticipated our next move. The opportune moment only arises once, Clara. His concern held validity. Olivia's surveillance extended throughout the manor. Despite this, a convention urged me to unveil the truth to Edward. I took a moment to contemplate. What should I prioritize first? I think we should inform Edward. There's like no way in hell that we can't tell him first, so... No, we should have enough time. The mystic undertakings orchestrated by Olivia unfolding exclusively under the cloak of night. Whether to evade inquisitive eyes or due to some inherent nocturnal nature, they were a nocturne of their own. As I articulated my reflections, Brandon, who had recollected Robert's ritual, substantiated my deductions. Perhaps you are correct. Even if it's in the basement, the devil would be powerless under the daylight. And Edward never had a say in the matter. He had always been imperiously informed about the results every time. Perhaps it is time Edward was privy to the entire narrative, even if it harbors tragedy. Brandon nodded helplessly, discerning the determination in my gaze. I'm getting so excited. I just need to know what happens. I can't read properly. Then, let's proceed this way. I'll head to the cabin first, and you go find Edward. Understood. Okay. Following the culmination of our discourse, I reached for the doorknob. Suddenly, Brandon intervened. By the way, Clara. Yes? Thank you. Huh? He wore a wistful smile, as though liberated from an immense burden. Thanks to you, I finally mustered the courage. The courage to confront the past, to face the curse he had eluded. I pondered the gains that lay ahead for myself, him, and Edward through its resolution. Or through this resolution. There was nothing left but to nod and press forward. Okay, I don't know why I'm doubting Brandon. Oh, here's Edward. The study was replete with an occult literature unrelated to my affliction. Volumes discussing the sacrifice of lives to salvage another and the transference of life energy. If these were what my father wanted to do for my mother, he wanted...
お母さんを助けたかったんだ。
I'm sorry, I forgot he had a voice actor. A mirthless laugh escaped as I contemplated the hypothetical actions of a loving husband. Then, with logical deduction, I unraveled the origin of the curse. Laughter bubbled forth of the simplicity of the answer, the realization that everything now fell into place. Why my mother sought me, why she damned me, and why my father harbored resentment. It dawned on me that all the curses likely emanated from my father's actions, infiltrating every facet of my life. I sighed and closed the books. In that instant, an unfamiliar sound enveloped my ears. A book slipped from my hands, startled by the haunting thoughts of my mother. Hastily recovering the falling volume, a familiar voice penetrated the confines from beyond. Edward, are you in there? It was a voice belonging to Clara. Exhaling a sigh of relief, I swung open the door to find Clara breathless, clutching the hem of her skirt. Her visage bore a troubled expression as she gazed at me. Urgently restoring the book to its designated place, I stepped into the corridor.
クララ、急にどうしてここに？
Mr. Brandon told me about the late Lord Robert, and Lady Isabella. Clara's revelation about grasping the intricacies of the past within a brief span caught me off guard. It was a topic I had pursued persistently, to no avail. The disbelief lingered as Clara addressed me. Brandon mentioned that Mr. Robert summoned a devil in the past, and since then, Olivia has taken over.
オリビアが？
Right. I forgot to inform you about her. Clara sought me out, revealing her discovery of Olivia's clandestine visits to a dubious cabin, the alleged location where my father purportedly summoned a demon to resurrect my mother. Acknowledging her adeptness in uncovering truths beyond my reach, I contemplated her revelation, recognizing the unsettling gravity it carried. As if to downplay its significance, she uttered something even more shocking. Oh? Regardless, Olivia seems to be attempting to cause harm to you. The nightmarish realization unfolding before me stirred a complex whirlwind of emotions. Nodding in silent acknowledgement, I endeavored to conceal the shocked expression etched upon my face.
それなら行かないと。
Why should you hide your shock? I mean, I get, okay. Following Clara's lead, we made our way to the cabin. This is so pretty. En route, an ominous feeling of foreboding enveloped me, intensified by the blood-red hues of the sunset. Dismissing it as a reflection of my mood, I shook my head, though historical precedent suggested the reliability of such premonitions.
ここがその小屋なんだ。
A scrutinizing gaze fell upon the dilapidated cabin, a structure I would have ordinarily overlooked. Molds adorned the aged wood, which had darkened with time. Puzzled by my prior disregard for a building of such unattractive demeanor, I entertained the notion that perhaps this was yet another manifestation of Olivia's enchantments. A sudden bout of dizziness halted my steps. Clara faced me as she effortlessly swung the door open. Are you afraid?
怖くはないが、ただ複雑だ。
In a moment of contemplation, Clara hesitated, her gaze lingering on my expression before extending her hand. A subtle glance inside the door appeared almost like an attempt to rationalize her actions. The stairs are somewhat high. Take my hand? A biting wind swept across my cheeks, seemingly trying to impede my progress. Undeterred, I advanced toward the offered hand, a surge of determination coursing through me.
君がいれば全部うまくいく。
Oh? Clasping Clara's hand firmly, I embarked in the obscurity of the staircase. Downward we descended, traversing a lengthy staircase. The sense of strangeness and foreboding amplified as we navigated the seemingly boundless descent. Yet with the irrevocable decision to press forward, we continued our journey. Ooh, this is kind of pretty though. In a cavernous hall beneath, an altar reminiscent of a demonic cult's ritual site met our gaze. I like the lighting. Bespattered with blood, it bore witness to a macabre tableau. At the far end of the hall stood Olivia. Her back turned to Brandon. She appeared to be recovering from a skirmish. Cluttering a marionette eerily mirroring my likeness, Brandon bore the scars of profuse bleeding. An evident stab wound on his exposed abdomen hinted at the nature of this confrontation.
Brando!
A reflexive exclamation brought Olivia's attention, and she turned, donning an inscrutable smile. My strides faltered as she raised her hands and opened her mouth. "You're too late, Edward."
Dame!
I wouldn't endure further loss within the confines of the manor. Without hesitation, I released Clara's hand and darted towards her, observing her determined advance on Brandon. Oh my god, what's that? Oh. Okay. We're just gonna keep going. I can't leave us on a cliffhanger. I can't leave myself on a cliffhanger. Clara. The situation in the basement unfolded with a severity beyond my initial expectations. My grip on Edward's hand tightened as I surveyed the scene. Olivia clutched a dagger, and Brandon appeared pallid. He bore the signs of injury from attempting to disentangle the marionette from Olivia's grasp. As I poised to intervene, Edward, without conscious thought, cried out. The unsettling sound of Olivia's movement, akin to an unoiled jointed doll, accompanied her swift turn. Her eyes, the lone beacons in her weathered countenance, exuded an otherworldly gleam. Her lips twitched unnaturally, and she spoke in hushed tones. "You're too late, Edward."
ダメだ!
Almost instinctively, Edward approached them, compelling me to do the same. With a seeming shift in focus, Olivia suddenly directed a disconcerting gaze towards me. Her eyes flashed a disquieting luminosity. My mind flooded with a disturbing imagery. The unfolding sequence of events held me in a transient silence, caught between unspoken words and imminent danger. In a sudden and decisive move, Edward emerged from the shadows, seizing Olivia's arm to halt her assault. A deft twist of her shoulder ensued, a masterful display of combat prowess from an unexpected source. Olivia contorted in a manifestation of rage, yet Edward's grip remained unyielding. As the dagger slipped from Olivia's grasp, Edward only then lifted his gaze to meet mine.
大丈夫? Clara.
I'm fine, but in that tense moment, I found myself at a loss for words. A confluence of gratitude and the realization of my peril formed a knot in my throat. Don't mind me. Let's talk when this is over. What escaped my lips was a deliberate deflection, an expedient strategy dictated by the urgency of the situation. Shifting my focus to Brandon, I approached cautiously to assess the extent of his injuries. Mercifully, the inflicted wound proved less severe than feared. Despite the pallor resulting from blood loss, a sigh of relief resonated between Edward and me, while Brandon, in contrast, knit his brows in contemplation. I suppose I'm getting old. I'm not what I used to be. Amidst the charged atmosphere, Olivia, a subtle presence until then, disrupted the equilibrium with a cryptic headshake and spontaneous laughter. "Ha! You were the same even in the past." Hard to deny. The complexity in Brandon's eyes mirrored the escalating tension. Edward's gaze shifted from Brandon to Olivia. Olivia responded to the tightening grip on her wrist with a derisive sneer, her impish grin adding a layer of mockery to the situation. "You seem angry."
それじゃダメですか?
In response to Edward's cold retort, Olivia only replied with a mocking smile. "I see. You still don't know the sins you bear." The sins all originated from Robert. What else could possibly remain? Edward's brow furrowed slightly, suggesting he too harbored some suspicions.
父が母を助けるために悪魔を召喚したことは知っています。あなたがなぜこの仕事を続けるのか理解できないけど。
Is Brandon still in on this? I don't want him to be, but it seems like that's the most likely situation. Even as he spoke, Edward's demeanor retained a certain deflation. suggesting the presence of concealed truths that remain tantalizingly beyond reach. Olivia's response, a mix of bafflement and dread, resonated with the weight of Edward's confession. You've really been living in the dark, haven't you? A cacophony of laughter erupted from Olivia, her shoulders heaving with unrestrained mirth. Abruptly, her focus shifted to Brandon. An intense, venomous glare emanated from her. Despite being cognizant of her attention being elsewhere, a chill coursed down my spine, sensing the intensity of her hostility. Veins protruded on Olivia's visage, and through clenched teeth, she uttered malicious words. I'm not surprised. What could that cowardly Brandon have said anyway? That coward wouldn't have said anything. In response, Brandon flinched, attempting to articulate a reply that remained imprisoned within his mouth. Olivia seized the silence as opportunity, reveling in her element as she derided Edward. Perhaps that's a blessing for you. Sometimes it's better not to know anything.
それはどういうことだ?
It's better for you to live, thinking that you're just a poor victim, seeking comfort in that. You become clean. How convenient. Edward's gaze, seeking answers, flicked to Brandon. He only exhibited a silent inner turmoil, manifested in clenched fists and shut eyes. No, Edward, you didn't do anything wrong. This is all our fault. Now you're playing uncle? That's hilarious. With a seamless fluidity, Olivia revealed an obscured obscured dagger from her beneath the fabric of her skirt. Edward, dodge! My lapse in vigilance, trusting the false security of Edward's discarded blade, unfolded as a grave mistake. Edward, swift in his evasion of a hastily swung blade, released his grip on Olivia, and Olivia pivoted to face me. In that fleeting exchange of glances, an unspoken understanding materialized, signaling a shift in her elusive intentions. With Brandon incapacitated on the ground, the onus to intervene fell on me. However, as I moved to confront Olivia, an unexpected force restrained me. I fell to the ground, startled, fixating my gaze on Brandon's resolute figure. A sudden shift occurred as he threw himself in Olivia's direction instead of mine, as though he deemed it a resolution to this entire disconcerting spectacle. What happened? Why? Observing the dagger's ascent into Brandon's chest, I uttered a muted expression of disbelief. Both Edward and I stood motionless, mouths agape, grappling with the horrifying scene unfolding before us. Okay, I'm so sorry I doubted you, Uncle Brandon. But there's something else going on that we don't know. We don't have all the details. Unperturbed, Olivia callously cast Brandon aside, closing the distance toward me. Her gaze lingered just beyond my line of vision, fixated on the marionette that Brandon had dropped. I rose, cradling the puppet hauntingly resembling Edward in my arms. As I slowly retreated, Olivia offered a peculiar gesture. Clara, I assure you if you give me that, you'll get out of here safe and sound. A strange proposition to spare the lone observer of this crime. The notion struck me as absurd. And a nervous snort escaped to my lips. I'm not foolish enough to be deceived in a situation like this. I'm sorry to hear that. Lifting my gaze, I peered beyond her. Me too. In a decisive move, Edward seized Olivia, throwing her toward the altar. The ensuing collision set cascading candles, transforming the vicinity into flames. Among the consumed items was Edward's portrait. Olivia, with frantic urgency, scrambled to her feet, clutching the portrait as though it cradled profound significance. Unfortunately, the flames had already devoured more than half of its essence, rendering the prospect of restoration bleak. No, damn it! After a moment of emotional upheaval, Olivia cast the portrait away, her countenance transforming into that of a tormented soul. Mad laughter erupted, mingling with the echoes of her incomprehensible muttering. I was almost there. Absurd! This is absurd. Have I corrupted myself just to see my plans fail? Following her lament, Olivia's gaze, now imbued with an unsettling sadness, turned toward me. Rivulets of blood descending from her eyelids conjured an illusion of tearful distress. What a shame, Clara. Oh. Amidst Olivia's enigmatic utterances, a mysterious warmth tinged with crimson surged forth from her being. And I stood in bewilderment as she crumpled to the ground. Did Edward do that? A distant howl penetrated the air, leading me to turn and witness Edward, holding Brandon, his face etched in despair.
ブランドン、しっかりしてください。目をつぶってはいけません。
So was that Edward, or that wasn't Edward who did the stabbies? Despite Edward's impassioned pleas, Brandon wore a smile, resigned to the inevitable. Tenderly, he brushed Edward's cheek with a hand stained by blood. I'm sorry, Edward. I didn't want to hurt you. I should have told you, although it hurts.
大丈夫です。後で一緒に話しましょう。今は言わないでください。
Yeah, that's right. You might as well stay alive and tell us everything. I'm afraid it's too late.
嫌です。あなたさえ失ったら僕は。
Whenever there is a meeting, a parting shall follow. Words escaped Brandon's lips in a gurgle of blood before his last breath. Despair etched itself across Edward's face, intensifying with each strained gasp. Brandon, with determined eyes, forcibly shifted Edward aside. Hurry. If you linger here too long, you won't make it out on time.
ブランドン。
Pull yourself together. Remember what you promised Clara. His eyes then met mine, conveying a resolute certainty. The words he had shared with me earlier reverberated hauntingly in my mind. By the way, Clara, thank you. Thanks to you, I finally mustered the courage. That seemed a little foreboding earlier. As acrid smoke permeated the air, the ominous prospect of entombment loomed. A decision had to be made. For Brandon's sake, for Edward's sake, a solemn respect for his choice became imperative. We have to go. We have to go.
クララ。
I tugged on Edward's arm as he beheld my tears. He clasped my hand. As we descended the stairs, a resounding collapse of the ceiling accentuated the urgency. I couldn't bring myself to turn back. The voracious flames danced, reducing the cabin to embers and ashes. Within the fiery embrace, Brandon and Olivia likely met their end. Gazing at the conflagration, I wore an expression of profound despair. All who held the key to the truths of that fateful day were now lost, their secrets consigned to the relentless flames.
あまり時間が経っていないみたいだ。
Right? Edward.
今日見た夕焼けもこんなに赤いのに。
I gently rested my hands on his shoulders, and he reciprocated by laying his over mine. The dried remnants of Brandon's blood on his skin crumbled with every movement. Together we stood amidst the haunting glow of the burning cabin, his weary gaze locked onto the consuming flames. The residue of loss lingered in the air as he, a man stripped of everything, stared into the void for a long time. So we don't know everything, and I'm not sure if we will. I mean, we survived. Edward survived, that's good. With the passage of time, the expanse of the manor yielded to the resilient embrace of nature. Interrupting my task of clearing overgrowth, I straightened my back, stiffened from the labor, and cast my eyes upward to the canvas of the blue sky. In this dilapidated realm, marred by the traces of black soot, life persistently asserted itself. Seated with knees drawn together, I tilted my head in contemplation. Wouldn't you agree, Brandon? Head rested on my arms, knees cradled against my chest, my gaze fixated on the solemnity of the tombstone. A futile longing to engage in conversation with the departed occasionally tugged at my heart. Helen sighs every so often, adding one more tombstone to this mausoleum. A nostalgic chuckle escaped me as I recalled the man's heavy sigh upon beholding the near gutting of the manor house. Despite our designated roles as first responders, both of us grappling with the aftermath of trauma proved ineffectual. Consequently, it was Alan, the head butler, who bore the burden of shedding blood, sweat, and tears to procure the funds essential for the house's reconstruction. The formidable challenges inherent in the role of head butler became glaringly apparent. Beneath the verdant carpet of grass, I found myself immersed in a question that perpetually lingered, a constant companion to my thoughts. Was I being too selfish? The insistent thought gnawed at me. My steadfast desire to disclose the truth to Edward had seemingly disrupted the seamless flow of events. The fire had not even spared Robert's once impenetrable study, smoldering it to ruins, and the truths Edward sought were now ephemeral, carried away on the winds of destruction. A sigh, laden with frustration, escaped with my lips as the distant cadence of footsteps reached my ears. Approaching me with a bouquet of flowers, Edward's eyes, still imbued with a cerulean depth, conveyed unspoken sentiments. Standing before me, he took a moment to select his words with care, extending a greeting to his familiar manner.
いいお昼だね、クララ。
I mean, I feel like we should.
どこにいるか探したんだけど、
I feel like
こ
Brandon
こ
would
に
have.
いたんだね。
I'm sorry. I feel like Brandon would have died anyway, so it's good that Edward was there, but I don't know if that was the right choice. Of course. This is my duty.
もうこんなことしなくても。
So true.
君が望むなら何をしてもいいけど。
In response to Edward's bemused reply, a fleeting smile played upon my lips, concealing any hint of sorrow within. Edward placed the bouquet upon Brandon's tombstone, closing his eyes in a moment of prayer. The wind whispered secrets, and birds ascended into the valley, vanishing behind a puffy veil. In this contemplative landscape, Edward assumed the guise of a mysterious painting, framed by the unseen hand of nature. Blinking, I watched until Edward concluded his prayer, slowly reopening his eyes. The tempest within his azure glaze had given way to inscrutable calm. In that moment, memories were surfaced. Memories of the last time I shared this mausoleum with him. A day as pleasant as the one enfolding us now. In the moment our gazes converged, he graciously extended an invitation, his smile indicative of a cordial gesture.
ちょっと歩く？
Yes? Can we go past the manor now? With dignified courtesy, Edward extended his hand toward my seated self. Devoid of any compelling reason to decline, I accepted his hand, rising to my feet. Rather than the anticipated release, Edward maintained our connection, guiding me into the garden with our hands intertwined. As I watched him navigate the lush vegetation, a gentle breeze whispered secrets, and I unconsciously tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The garden, once ensnared in the wild embrace of overgrowth, embarked on a meticulous journey of rebirth, row by row. The sight of the garden's revival evoked a sense of refreshment, prompting frequent visits, and even in the absence of a specific purpose. Despite my belief in maintaining a veil over my struggles, it became evident that Edward had astutely discerned my emotional turmoil amid the swarming emotions. Consequently, he often led me to this tranquil sanctuary during moments of melancholy, initiating discussions on a myriad of topics. Demonstrating his commitment, Edward directed my attention to a carefully chosen plot for a flower bed adorned with pots gifted by Brandon. He extended an offer to import seeds from my homeland, a gesture I politely declined. The roots of my departure from my childhood hometown had long grown beyond the tendrils of homesickness, rendering the prospect somewhat awkward. Despite Edward's apparent endeavor to settle a silent debt, such gestures in their essence felt superfluous. It was I who wanted to stay by his side in the first place. My gaze ascended, drawn to him by an unseen force. His observation, unnoticed until then, lingered on me. I'm glad, though, that you can sleep well now.
僕もだ。
With the enchanter now gone, the peculiar occurrences within the manor dissipated. No longer did disembodied voices reverberate, nor did shadows lurk in the obscurity. However, for reasons unknown, Edward remained confined within the manor's boundaries. If only he could be liberated definitively. Bereft of all leads and confronted with a dead end, Edward leaned on the pendant to navigate each passing day. Yet not everything succumbed to the flames. My resolute commitment to inhabit this manor endured. Time stretched generously before us, and I vowed to confront the lingering curse alongside Edward. Hope persevered, a distant glimmer on the horizon. In a lingering gaze, our faces eventually parted, turning toward the unfolding landscape.
もし考えが変わったら教えてね。
Certainly. A brief moment of hesitation, and he gently released my hand, veiling his face.
その言葉は旅立ちたいという言葉にも聞こえる。
Loneliness etched deep lines into his expression once more. Cruelly gentle, I pulled his hand away from his face, intertwining our fingers tightly and staring directly into his eyes. I'm staying by your side to fight the curse. Because that's the promise I made. On my declaration, Edward smiled, lowering his head for a gentle kiss. The cool touch of his lips prompted the closure of my eyes. His breath lingered, sparking a selfish thought. Was it wrong to find solace in his continued existence amid the scratching pain and sadness? The pressure lifted from my lips, and I cautiously allowed my eyes to reopen. His gaze, soft and warm, mirrored the sunlight enveloping our shared space.
クララ、僕はあなたがどこで何をしてもいつも尊重されることを望んでいる。
What's this about all of a sudden?
いつもそうだったというのはおかしいだろうか。
Oh no? I mean, what are you trying to say though? With deliberate grace, Edward descended to one knee, his lips tenderly caressing my hand as he whispered words that lingered in the air.
あなたを世界の誰よりも大切にしたいです。
Internally crying, it's fine.
僕と一緒にいる瞬間だけは傷つかないようにしたいです。それで全てが終わったら正式にプロポーズしてもいいですか？
His sudden and stirring confession left me momentarily speechless. I hadn't anticipated Edward confessing before I did. I mean, you did confess before you told him you loved him. But I guess reaffirming that after all this stuff is good. But we're glad. I was like, my God. Yay. Okay. The desire to respond affirmatively warred with the weight of societal distinctions. In a state of flustered contemplation, I verbalized the answer that had occupied my thoughts. I thought we were always going to be together anyway. No, I don't mean this. Are you all right with me?
あなた以外に誰がいるでしょう？
Why? You deserve better, Edward.
もう望むすべてが目の前に立っています。
Girl, stand up. You guys are perfect. Great, we love this for them. Suppressing the urge to stomp and scream in the face of overwhelming embarrassment demanded an extraordinary effort. I was thinking the same thing, so that should be sufficient. Oh my god! Oh my god! I instinctively wrapped my hands around my head in response to the shocking explanation. Edward illuminated with a crescent smile. Oh my god, so cute. Look at him. Even though he was the one who proposed, why was it me feeling so embarrassed? I insist. It's enough. Stand up. I gently pulled on his hand, effortlessly coaxing him back onto his feet. Before us lay the canvas of our new haven, a manor that bore the potential to morph into our perpetual resting place. A shared moment of reflection preceded the imminent trials that awaited. In the grand scheme of things, the concept of eternal damnation seemed trivial, rendered inconsequential by the omnipotent force of unadulterated love. My head found a resting place on Edward's shoulder as we gazed upon the lush surroundings enveloping the manor. I love you. Edward responded with a nod, and the pendant suspended from his neck emitted a resplendent red glow. It gleamed with the light of life. Normal ending, the eternal nest. Oh my god, that means there's a better ending. No. I mean, that's great. So that's normal. But can we do an ending where we like figure it all out? Probably, but I'm just gonna leave that for me playing for funsies and encourage all of you to go find that ending for yourself. If there is a demand for finding out the other endings, I could do it if there's enough interest. I do think there's because that was just the normal ending. I don't know if it was right at the end to involve Edward. I would think so. You know, like realistically, I would think so, but anyways, this was really fun. I still have many questions, and I'm assuming the best ending gives us more answers. Like, okay, I doubted Brandon, but what did he do exactly? Like, what was his involvement with his brother and his brother's wife? Like, and the curse stuff. Seemingly he had a hand in that. Olivia is the devil, ? And, like, just exists to, like, maintain the curse? I don't know. pendant still exists. Edward still can't leave the manor's grounds, so who knows. Happy for Clara and Edward. They are so cute. I love that for them. I did not get a CG. I wonder if I would get a CG in the best ending. But this has been very enjoyable, and I really enjoyed the story. So I hope you have too. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below about all of this. It's a little bit, you know, I like that it's a little bit of a mystery of sorts. I did hate that, like, it seems that, like, Lord Robert despised his son for, like, no real reason. Like, it's not his fault. Like, he literally was the child being about to be born, and he couldn't, like, do anything about his mother dying. Like, is it his fault? No. So it feels, like, crazy to me that blame should be placed on him. Anyways, thank you so much for watching Under the Thorns. Again, I enjoyed playing it. If you liked the video, please press the like button, and if you'd like to see me play other visual novels on my channel, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications of when I post. Yeah. And also Happy New Year, by the way. I realize I haven't said that on my channel, so Happy New Year. It is now 2025. How exciting. Alright, until next time, bye!